let's start with this. Age is not the biggest issue. You might be surprised by that. It is better if we don't shoot children. I will grant that. But let's be honest, there isn't always time to assess a criminal's age or their intent. And you don't know if they're armed. You know, when Orest Schur came out to confront the assailants, which I think you have the legal right to do, the legal and moral right to do. If somebody is breaking into your home, if they are trying to steal your car, you have the legal and moral right to go confront them. Okay? And that, yes, that does mean you can bring violence with you. Now, some states may have it different. They may have varying laws, so adjust accordingly. However, in many states, you have castle doctrine where you can protect your home, including up to and with lethal force. Okay? And I consider it to be morally acceptable. However, the problem that we have in saying, oh, these guys were young, the problem with that is he doesn't know when he goes out to confront them what their intent is. Is their intent to steal the car no matter what? Are they armed? Will they draw on you? Right? You don't know this. So for me, I look at it, remember, guns equalize. There's a story it's like years old. There's a pregnant woman here in Florida. A couple of assailants broke into the home, started pistol whipping her husband. She ran and got the AR-15, shot one of them. I think she killed one and ended up wounding the other, I think was how the story goes, right? Like, so it was an equalizer because in most cases, a pregnant woman is absolutely no match for one man, let alone two. However, the AR-15 equalized. It made her just as dangerous, perhaps even more dangerous than the assailants. And she saved her family. So we will tell people guns equalize. Well, guns also equalize criminals. So if you are 14 and you have a firearm and you are willing to use it, a 6'5", 300-pound man is now your equal, or you are now his equal. So yes, it is possible that we look and we say a child will get shot in the middle of a crime. So I disregard the argument that, oh, they're children, they're 14, they're 15. No, you don't always have time to assess that, nor do you know their intent, nor do you know the outcome of how that's going to play out. All you know is crime, my property, I need to take some sort of action. Maybe you're not the kind of person that wants to go and confront an assailant. Maybe you barricade yourself into a room and you can safely do so, keep your family safe, and you call the police. Fine. Maybe you're somebody that's like, hey, that's my property. I'm going to go out and I'm going to address this situation. I have a firearm, and if I absolutely have to, I will fire upon this person. Okay, fine. Like, both of those, in my opinion, are legitimate choices. So let me go through, because I think there's some details that help out when we're talking about this particular story. Ex-Space Force Sergeant Orest Schur sentenced to 54 years in prison for fatally shooting suspected teen car thief. Orest Schur, 29, became emotional as he apologized for murdering 14-year-old Xavier Kirk before he was sentenced to 54 years in prison for the 2023 fatal shooting, the Adams and Broomfield Counties District Attorney's Office announced. Now, what I just said, what makes this story murder when I just said, hey, there is a situation under which, yes, a 14 and 15, or is it 2 14? I think one was 14, I think one was 15. But teenagers, what makes this murder when I just said that, yes, there is a situation under which a teenager may be legally shot and may be morally shot. Let's continue. He goes down here, a picture of him. It's a 13-year-old, 13 and 14-year-old. The deadly shooting also left a 13-year-old hospitalized. Schur, then a technical sergeant with the U.S. Space Force based in Aurora, was awakened by a car alarm outside his apartment around 11 p.m., July 5th, 2023. The 27-year-old grabbed a pistol, ran outside to his Hyundai Elantra, where he spotted two people dressed in all black attempting to break in the car. So at this point, based on what we can read, there is no understanding of how old are they. Now you might say, well, what about their size? Hello? I'm 5'3" and I weigh 120 pounds. I am the size of a teenager. Okay? I'm a 47-year-old man. I am the size of a teenager. So if I were to go and break into someone's house or try to steal their car, they have no idea whether I'm 47 or 17. Schur confronted the individuals, but the would-be carjackers fled in another car. The sergeant gave chase in his car, fired multiple rounds at the teens. The fleeing car crashed into the backyard fence of a home 4 blocks south of Schur's residence. Okay, now he's not even in his own neighborhood. 4 blocks away. That's a big deal. It goes on, it says, Kirk and his teen accomplice hopped out of the damaged car and began running away. So now they've fled the scene. They're 4 blocks away. They crashed the car, and now they're trying to run. Kirk was found suffering from gunshot wounds to the head and back. He was transported to a local hospital and pronounced dead. The 13-year-old who was driving the getaway car was shot in the back and managed to get to a relative's house before being brought to a hospital and survived. Schur was arrested after the shooting and charged with first-degree murder and first-degree attempted murder. A jury found the discharged Space Force sergeant guilty of the lesser crimes of second-degree murder and second-degree attempted murder on June 16th. Okay, during the trial, Schur claimed the 2 potential carjackers had shot first and he was acting in self-defense. Investigators found 11 shell casings were fired, all by Schur, and concluded there was no evidence that either teen was armed during the robbery. Okay, so this is what makes it different. Nothing about this situation said that Schur was in fear of his life. Nothing about it said that he was addressing the crime on his property, right? That would be vastly different. But there is plenty of evidence that, and it's unclear to me whether or not he was shooting as he was driving or if the shooting occurred after they crashed. It's unclear to me. A lot of people had a lot to say. This man served several combat tours and had 14 service medals. Okay, not relevant. He continued to serve his country in the Space Force. Not relevant. Remember that. Okay, here's what I remember. Well, I don't want to say remember. Here's what I know. If you look up what Space Force, their training is, it's not dealing in would-be car thieves or car chases or apprehending people. His life has been destroyed due to unruly teenagers who threatened his property. Okay? That's not really true. Historical centrist. Jury nullification needs normalized. I do agree with that. I want this guy as a neighbor, not the carjackers nor their family. I don't want any of them as a neighbor. I'll tell you why in a moment. The law currently forces me to be neighbors to the latter. What? Are you retarded? No, you can live wherever you want. The law doesn't force you to be neighbors with anybody. While jailing a guy who was defending property in a manner that would make nobody ever want to steal a car in his neighborhood. Perhaps that's true. But we're going to talk about that. This man served Valentina Gomez. Now, if there is one I despise Randy Fine as an elected official. If this woman ever gets elected, she will be right next to him in who I despise. And you can go look up her account. She's a very despicable person. This man served his nation and protected his property from criminals. He should get an award, not prison time. The world is better with those little George Floyds getting locked up. Okay, yes, the world would be better if criminals were locked up. Okay? But we're going to address whether or not this man's some sort of hero. Let's see what else we got. Karen Datz, the judge, even charged him with first-degree murder. Female judges are an actual plague to civilized societies, actively promote criminals over above those of us who just want to live peacefully. Are you dumb? What was peaceful about car chasing somebody 4 blocks away, where they crash their car and then go on a shooting spree, leave with at least 11 rounds, well, not at least, with 11 rounds? That's not peaceful. Gosh, people. 54 years is excessive. There's an argument to be made there. He was defending himself. No, he wasn't. Property is an extension of self. Yes, it is. I mean, for those of us who earn it and don't just steal it from others. Lesson is, if property is not worth losing your life over, don't steal. I hope it gets appealed. Okay? I agree. Property is not worth losing your life over. So don't steal. But chasing somebody 4 blocks away, is also not, in shooting them while they're trying to run away, that's also not worth your life being over, basically. Hello? Orest Schur is a good man. He did what needed to be done. You're an idiot, Josiah. Let's see what else we got. At some point, we're going to have to completely rewrite all the laws in this nation so that the criminals actually go to jail instead of the citizens. I think his name speaks for himself, douchebag. Why? He did nothing wrong. We'll talk about that. He should have gotten probation only, miscarriage of justice, in my opinion. Well, you have a terrible opinion. Scott says, I thought you could always protect yourself and your property from felons. Well, you can if you're on your property. But when you're on somebody else's property, you know what you're doing? You are now creating a threat to somebody else. Okay, basically what happened is, what people are saying is they want untrained people to go on car chases who have no training in car chases, no training in apprehension of fleeing suspects, and look up the Space Force, with their training. They don't get any training in that. But some of these boneheads, they want people to be permitted to bring violence to nearby neighbors and putting those people at risk. It's 11 o'clock. I've walked my dog at 11 o'clock. I don't typically do it that late, but sometimes the circumstances are such that I just, I'm busy and I can't get to it till 11 o'clock. What if somebody is taking a stroll in their neighborhood and somebody is chasing some would-be car thieves? They're shooting at them. The car thief crashes their car and kills that person. The person chasing should be held responsible. Why? If somebody speeds off and they see that nobody's chasing them, they get a block, maybe two, they can slow down, right? They're likely to slow down. Why? Because they don't want to bring attention to them. But if somebody's hot on their heels, what are they going to do? They're still trying to get away, which means 4 blocks later, they're still driving at an accelerated pace. And 14-year-olds, I promise you, 14-year-olds have no idea how to drive a car at high speeds through neighborhoods without killing anybody, because most people don't. Like, I wouldn't expect a trained officer to be able to do that and guarantee the risk of not harming somebody else. The whole problem from my position here is not that he shot teenagers so much. It's that he took the violence from his property to somebody else's neighborhood, somebody else's property. That's the problem that I see. And he has no way of containing that. That's the problem. He put other people at risk. That's on top of the fact that they were fleeing. We can have an argument all day about whether or not fleeing should be, if somebody is trying to get out of your house and you shoot them anyway, we can have an argument about whether or not that's moral, whether or not that should or should not be legal, right? We can have those arguments. But once you leave your property, you are now endangering other people. If I live 4 blocks away, I don't want somebody chasing teenagers for which either one of them may wreck into my car, my property, my family, or anybody else along those lines. Now, as far as shooting them, okay, this is a tense situation. And we have to ask ourselves, is he trained in any way to shoot in a tense situation like that? Like soldiers are. Like, I've done live fire scenarios where, there's live fire going ahead, going overhead, and you're supposed to, act, as you would in actual combat, right? It's tense, and you're supposed to keep your head about you, right? Did Orrin receive any of that? Presumably not. Did he receive any of that in the context of a neighborhood? Oh, I guarantee you he didn't. And then he's shooting. He shot 11 times. Here's an old article from the New York Times, 11 years of police gunfire in painstaking detail. This is May 8th of 2008. New York City police officers fire their weapons far less often than they did a decade ago, a statistic that has dropped along with the crime rate. But when they do fire, even at an armed suspect, there is often no one returning fire at the officers. Okay? So there's kind of a similarity here, right? Police officers who are trained are firing at somebody who's not firing back. Because when you're firing back, that changes the dynamic of the situation. All right? Officers hit their targets roughly 34% of the time. The other 66% of the time, where do those bullets go? Can you guarantee that they don't hit somebody? They don't damage somebody's property? Right? This is the problem. Trained officers who are on duty and have dealt with apprehending people, perhaps have had training in car chases, perhaps have been in one themselves, right? Maybe, maybe not. Even trained officers only hit their target 34% of the time, which means the other 66% of the time, they don't. Where those bullets go, who knows? If there's an innocent bystander, perhaps in one of them. That is the problem. It goes on to say when they fire at dogs, roughly 55% of the shots hit home. So apparently officers are good at killing your dog. They're not good at killing criminals. These are New York City police officers, people who deal with crime day in, day out. Orest was not one of those. He was a Space Force sergeant, somebody that deals in the logistics of space. Okay? He's not trained in urban combat. He's not trained in dealing with public suspects that might want to resist arrest or run, or, and then he has to apprehend them. He's not trained in any of that, which means we can make a reasonable assessment that the 34% is even less for him. He does not belong taking the violence to somebody else's neighborhood. So every one of those boneheads out there that are like, he should get a medal. No, he shouldn't. He should not be rewarded for bringing, if it was my neighborhood, he should not be rewarded for bringing violence to my neighborhood and endangering my family if I happen to be the one living there. Right? All of those residents, they want to live in peace, and they don't want to have a shootout in their neighborhood from some guy that's not trained that took violence from his property. If he had stayed on his property and shot them, depending on the circumstances, I might say, you know what? He's morally right and should be legally right. I might say that, right? But in this case, the answer is no way. He was completely wrong. I can say that based on the data, and I can say that based on somebody that's been in not one, not two, not even three, but 4 car chases. I'm not joking. 3 of them were when I was a stupid teenager, okay? A young adult, teenager/young adult. I got into car chases with people, okay? Where we were either having fun and being stupid, or there was some malice where we were trying to harm each other. I've almost been pushed off the road by other cars. I've been in some conflicts. And then once, when I actually had some level of training, when I was in Bosnia, and we worked with Interpol, the international police, and we chased somebody in our Humvees, okay? And I will tell you, as somebody that has experience with 4 car chases, Orest does not belong chasing people in the middle of the night down neighborhood blocks to go and try to shoot them. Unacceptable. He is wrong. He should go to jail. Those kids, or the one kid, he should go to jail for all of that. He should be accountable for the fleeing part too. I'm not holding it. I'm not saying he's unaccountable. Nope, he's accountable for trying to steal the car and for fleeing and for the damage that was caused while he was fleeing. He is accountable for all of that. He should go to jail for that as well. Orest should go to jail. The young kid should go to jail. The other kid, he died. Well, how do they say it on the internet? FAFO. F around, find out.